Hello, everyone, and welcome to BodyBags. I'll be your reviewer for today. I'm Lonnie from Tats, and yeah, you know that this is a random week, and the movie that I decided to go with actually was made, I believe, in 1985, and came out right before Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, even though both films basically focus on the same person, Henry Lee Lucas. The movie I'm talking about is Confessions of a Serial Killer, and this is a pretty rough watch. I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, so is Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. Um, I would say though that well, I mean, quick synopsis of the story. You have Daniel Ray Hawkins, who in this movie is played by Robert A. Burns. I don't know if you can see him right there. Of course, you know, as horror fans, the one thing we know from Robert E. Burns is we knew him from all of his work as a production designer, obviously for the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but he worked on many other movies too. He worked on, The Hills Have Eyes, Reanimator, Tourist Trap, The Howling, and on and on and on. He worked on so many movies. And he does not just acting, but he also does production design on this movie as well. Um, but yeah, he plays Daniel Ray Hawkins. Get it? Kind of like get it? Henry Lee Lucas, Daniel Ray Hawkins, that kind of thing. And at the beginning of the movie, Daniel is driving a car late at night. He gets pulled over by police, and he ends up being arrested. Not it's kind of vague at the very beginning, but he's in the police station and he's being this guy is like trying to do like the bad cop routine, trying to get him to confess. And the sheriff does it say the sheriff's name? No, it doesn't. I'm sorry, but anyway, so the sheriff, the main sheriff, he's like, yeah, we're not going to get any details out of this guy from this. So he goes in and starts trying to like butter him up. It's like yeah, we're both pretty hungry. Why don't you go get us a couple of cheeseburgers and fries? He's like, he's asking Daniel, you like chocolate milkshakes? He's like, yes, sir. So he's like, yeah, get some of those. And so they start smoking cigarettes and everything else. And Daniel, basically tells him, like, I'm not going to talk to the other guy because, he's being horrible to me and stuff like that. And he's like, I'm not going to talk to somebody who's going to treat me bad. And so he's like, well, let's talk, let's, try to build a rapport and all this stuff. So he starts talking, and this goes a little bit more into the backstory of the killer, a little bit more than Henry, because in Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, you do have, there is the one scene where Michael Rooker's character and Tracy Arnold's character, they're sitting at the table, and they're kind of just talking about like their family, like their backstory, and they just do it in that one scene, which I mean that's perfectly fine. It works great. I mean, don't get me wrong, Henry's an amazing horror film. It's still an amazing, great, just disturbing masterpiece of horror. And this one is, I wouldn't say it's a masterpiece of horror, but it's definitely a disturbing horror film for different reasons. But we'll get into that. So, he talks about, but that's the thing, like he starts talking about his childhood and starts talking about his first murder. And then this goes back into flashbacks and you see it, and he's talking about how his mother worked as a prostitute and his father, kills himself when his mother brings two guys home so that they can, basically she's working. And so these two guys start to double team her, and then the father shoots himself, commits suicide. Then he starts going into, talking about his first murder and everything else. And then, that's a lot of where the movie goes from there. A lot of the movie is Daniel just kind of recounting a lot of the events, and then it like goes back and doing flashbacks and goes back to the scene and kind of showing you what happens. And again, like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, it is a pretty loosely based version of the Henry Lee Lucas story. Henry is going around, and this movie definitely has more of a slasher movie vibe to it, though. Whereas Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, the movie, like that's the big difference between Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, and this movie. Henry definitely, the movie does feel as the title suggests. It's the portrait of a serial killer. It very much has more of a documentary, you were there kind of a feeling. It's it's very grim and just kind of in your face and just bold. And whereas this movie feels more like it's playing with more like slasher conventions, and there are parts of this movie that definitely feel like instead of watching, like a story like this, like really trying to tell the the true events of a serial killer and his exploits, this movie definitely has scenes where, I mean, like for example, there's like a scene where he's recounting about this one victim that got away, and it's nighttime. He's driving, and he stops to pick up this girl. She steps up to get ready to get into the car. He opens. He's like, "Yeah, that door's messed up, so I got to open it for you," and stuff like that. So when he opens the door, of course, the inside light of the car comes on, and she sees a dead body in the back of the car. And so he comes around to open the car door for her, and she's like, "No, I think I'll go and just maybe go back to town and stuff." And he realizes that she saw the dead body, so he starts chasing her through this kind of like cornfield, where it's like the corn isn't very high, but it's starting to get up there. So he chases her. So there's this kind of long, drawn out, suspenseful scene, and scenes that we've seen in like horror movies done before, slasher movies, where the female victim gets to the road and a car comes up, and she gets in the car, tells him, you need to drive, and he comes up and starts hitting on the windows and stuff, and they just barely escape and stuff. So I mean, that kind of thing. We've seen stuff like that before. And then he continues like this movie is very disturbing in a number of scenes. There's one scene where he sees this woman that you got Daniel with the character Moon Luton, who is basically, he's meant to be Otis Toole. He's the version of Otis Toole in this film. And so they're moving furniture, and he sees this woman next door who's like watering her garden and stuff. And so he decides he wants to pay her a visit. And so there's a very really gruesome rape murder scene there. And like I said, the movie, it's disturbing. It's it's unsettling. And so they kind of continue on, and then what was her name, Becky, Molly in the movie. Yeah, in the real story and in Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, the girl's name was Becky, but in here the character's name is Molly. And so she hooks up with the two guys, and of course she's the sister of the Moon Luton character. So she gets together with them, and she starts running with them, and they're going on their killing spree and killing people here and there. And at one point, you're kind of heading into the third act, where Daniel and Molly, they decide that they're going to try to kill this guy and steal his car, but it turns out that the guy is actually a preacher. And he's like, hey, if you guys are down on your luck, you come over to my place. I'm a doctor, but I also run like a maintenance repair shop, or like a, not a maintenance, but a appliance repair shop, fix refrigerators, stoves, things like this. It's good work if you want it, and there's a place you can stay and all this. And so they decide to start doing that. And they bring Moon into this. And, still, as they're going along, they're killing people and stuff like this. Like there's, like I said, this movie definitely has some slasher conventions to it. There's definitely there's one character who's the she's like the receptionist, the secretary, but the receptionist for the doctor, and she's very suspicious of these guys, and also his beautiful nubile blonde teenage daughter. She's also very suspicious of them and stuff. And, of course, Daniel, he takes very much of a liking. No, can't really show you. They don't really have a picture. But, he ends up taking very much a liking to the teenage daughter and would very much like to get his hands on her. And so, all goes on. And like I said, there's like another scene where, um, there's another scene where it's like it's a very long drawn out kind of suspenseful, almost like a slasher movie scene where the doctor, he goes, he's like, I got an emergency, I gotta leave. So it's just the teenage daughter, and so you see like you see like Daniel in the background stalking the girl and everything else, closing in on her, things like this. Um, I can't really say I like this movie. I remember reading about it years back in Fangoria. I remember them talking about it and saying it followed along the same lines as Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. And but the big draw for me is because I'm a huge Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan. A big draw for me was the fact that it was starring Robert A. Burns, and he was like, just like I really wanted to see this guy in action. I wanted to see him act and stuff. And this was like way back in the VHS days. This was before we started getting the DVDs with, like documentaries like The Shocking Truth or commentaries or any of that kind of stuff. Excuse me. So for me, it was a chance to finally see this guy. I'd seen still pictures of him in Fangoria and stuff like this, but it was like to really see Robert A. Burns, and that was the big draw for me. And and just watching the movie, just kind of being in awe of this man, that he's acting, and no offense to Michael Rooker, I love Michael Rooker as an actor as much as the next person, but I got to be honest, in my opinion, Robert E. Burns, like when you put pictures of him next to pictures of the real Henry Lee Lucas, he very much more embodies. And he looks like, he sounds like, he comes across a lot more as like a young Henry Lee Lucas than Michael Rooker. Like Michael Rooker is just, he did the best job he could, don't get me wrong, and I'm not taking anything away from him, but it's just like Michael Rooker is just too fucking cool, like he's too badass. I've talked about this before where you would put these great actors in these roles as a serial killer, and they do a good job, but it's just like like the person in real life does not deserve an actor this great playing them. And I kind of feel that way with, and I'm not taking away from Robert E. Burns either, but it's just kind of like, like you look at like Ted Bundy did not deserve an actor as good as Mark Harmon to play him. Diane Downs did not deserve Farrah Fawcett to play her. Like if you look at the real story of Diane Downs, like she was a piece of trash. She still is. She was just sorry ass poor white trash, and all that. And then you get Farrah Fawcett, one of the most beautiful, gorgeous, talented women ever to play her. That was like, so beneath Farrah Fawcett. Farrah Fawcett was so much better than that. Or you would get like, Brian Dennehy to play John Wayne Gacy. It's like Gacy did not deserve an acting powerhouse like Brian Dennehy to play him, You get what I'm saying. And it's the same thing, It's like Henry Lee Lucas did not deserve, a choice, just brilliant actor like Michael Rooker to play him, And I'm not saying that, Robert E. Burns is a bad actor or anything like that. No, he did a great job. He's very natural in the role. He does make your skin crawl. He's very creepy and effective in the role. But he did a great job. And and that was the thing, so for a long time I'd been wanting to see this movie again. And I watched it way back in the VHS days, and then for years nothing. Like this didn't even get a DVD release. So for a long time, this movie just, kind of just went into oblivion. It was just, seemed like it was never going to be heard from again. But, luckily, we ended up getting a nice Blu-ray of it. Thank you, Unearthed Classics. And, and now it's uncut. There were, I was like watching, it's like, yeah, I remember watching this movie a few times. And then it's like, oh, okay, there's a scene in this movie where they talk about they picked up this young man hitchhiking, and they, homosexually raped him and tortured him and killed him. It's like that wasn't in the original version. I was like, whoa, okay, that's new. And then there's also a scene. Well, I better not give it. Well, no, I'll go ahead and tell you because, if you've never seen the original cut of this, you wouldn't know the scene. But yeah, there's actually a scene in the movie where Daniel and Moon decide they want to go get themselves a new car, so they go out driving around, and they're driving down this dirt road, and they see this mother walking with a little girl, and it's like they pull up right beside them, and they just gun down the mother and the child. So I was like, damn, man, this movie it's tough. So yeah, there are some extra scenes added in here that weren't in the original cut, but what's in the original cut was gruesome and disturbing enough. I honestly can't say I like this movie. It is morbidly fascinating. This is definitely a movie like when you get done watching it though, you're definitely gonna feel like you need a long shower and a hug. It's gross, it's nasty, unapologetic. But this is a movie if you're definitely in a morally bankrupt kind of mood. It's good for that. If you ask me, that's the hard part. Like, I can't say if this is more disturbing than Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. It's definitely got disturbing moments in it, but I think that Henry kind of edges out this movie as a little bit more disturbing because, like I said, you watch Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, it has very much of a documentary. You are there, almost like a snuff film kind of vibe to it that this movie doesn't have. And like I said, while this movie is gruesome and unsettling, like I said, it feels more kind of like almost like a conventional slasher movie kind of a thing. And to be truthful, I really don't know why they did this whole Hannibal Lecter restraint mask. Like, this is nothing to do with the movie. Of course, that was the VHS cover back in the day, and of course, we all know, like, back in the VHS day, the covers lied to you, and, you go get a movie, it's like, the movie looked nothing at all like, what you saw on the cover, but, here you go. But, yeah, if you're interested in, if you're a true crime fanatic, and don't go in expecting the whole truth. Like I said, very much like Henry, this is a more fictionalized, romanticized version of the Henry Lee Lucas story. But, curiosity gets to you or something if you're interested in that. But the movie does do the one thing that Henry didn't do, is that the movie does kind of focus more on the whole aspect that when Henry Lee Lucas was caught and put into jail, that, he started confessing to just all of these crimes. And, like, next thing you know, like, it got to a point, like, it was ridiculous. This guy, like, it got to a point because they knew, there are documentaries on Lucas, you can look this up, but it got to a point, it was like, for, like, to benefit himself, like, he would say, if I confess to this crime, I want to have, like, a TV set in my jail cell, or I want, cigarettes, or I want better food, or I want, more, exercise, or, whatever. Like, he was confessing to anything and everything to try to get more, more perks, while he was in prison and stuff like that. And then eventually, like I said, there are documentaries on Netflix. There was a documentary about this called the Confession Killer. And eventually it started to unravel. Like, people realized, like, this guy just kept confessing that, like, any and every crime and missing person case they set in front of him, he was just, oh, I did it. Oh, yeah, I did it. But you realize, like, he was doing it to get something for himself, to try to make himself famous, to try to get more attention drawn to himself and things like this. And ultimately, everybody kind of started realizing, like, yeah, Lucas is full of it, and, he was on death row in prison, but I believe he died from, like, cardiac arrest, I believe it was, heart failure or something like that. But anyway, he's dead now. Good riddance to bad rubbish. But, so anyway, but yeah, if you're interested in the Henry Lee Lucas story, at least some aspects of it, like, I would say give this a watch. I can't say that I like it, but it's very much like a car wreck. It's horrible to look at, but at the same time, you can't look away. So that's kind of the best answer I can give. So yeah, so that's it. So if anybody took the time to watch this, I thank you for doing it. I appreciate you for doing it. I honestly hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, would you please leave it a like? And if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe to the BodyBags channel. There's a different reviewer, one for every day of the week. I'm the Friday reviewer. And yeah, it's still an honor to be here even after all this time. So that's it, everybody. Take care. Have a good night. See you all later. Bye.